Welcome everyone to today's talk, Going Beyond Boundaries. Our speaker today is Mr. Jeffrey Andrews. Before we start, just a couple of housekeeping issues. To obtain Health 1010 credit hour, students have to fill out an feedback form as proof of active participation. URL of the feedback form will be given later in the Zoom chat box and will also be emailed to participants. There will be a Q&A after the talk, so please save your questions till then. You can type your questions in the chat box or unmute yourself and ask verbally. Now, let me introduce today's speaker, Mr. Jeffrey Andrews. An Indian by descent, Hong Kong born and raised, Jeffrey Andrews is one of the first ethnic minority registered social workers in Hong Kong, committed to helping refugees and minority rights. In 2014, he traveled to the United Nations in Geneva to speak about the issues of segregated schools. He has been featured in numerous documentaries, news articles, and TV programs. He has received the Secretary for Home Affairs Commendation, awarded in recognition of his dedicated service and outstanding contributions to the enhancement of racial harmony and integration in Hong Kong. Recently, he was honored to be one of 2019 JCI Top Outstanding Young Persons. He also received the 2019 Cathay Pacific's Change Makers Award. His beloved football team, Manchester United, recognized him as one of 7 global heroes. Mr. Andrews has been with the Christian Actions Center for Refugees for 11 years as a social worker, and now he's serving as assistant manager. Jeff, would you like to start?
Yes, please. Thank you. Hello, 大家好. Don't worry, I'm not going to do this in Cantonese, but throughout my journey, I'll be talking a bit of my experience and, going beyond boundaries. Instead of just talking about, I love to go, have you go through my life in photos. That's my photo back in the day. I don't look the same. As you can see, pandemic makes you a little bit bigger. But I'd like to start with my family. Basically, many people say, oh, Jeff, did you guys, ethnic minorities, where are you from? Did you just come down after 1997? No, my grandpa came in 1963 and worked in a hotel called Fermi Hotel. And many ethnic minorities at that time used to come in for specialized jobs, F&B, import-export trading. There was many tailors. In fact, some of them are businessmen. So yeah, my grandfather came in the 70s. 60s, and then my dad came in the 70s, married my mom, and me and my sister are born and raised here. This is very unique because I always call myself a minority amongst minorities because, as you know, many Indians or South Asians, they either are Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, but very few are Christians. So I'm a Christian amongst my own community. And I also like to say that, I come from a middle-class family back in the day, but I've made some bad choices, and I'll, explain to you as we go along. Now, let's start with schooling. When I went to school, it was very different as ethnic minorities. We did not go to local schools, or we did go to local schools, but it was segregated. So when I went to a primary school, morning section was all local Chinese, afternoon section was all ethnic minorities. And we were given 2 languages. One was English, and the second one, you had a choice between Hindi, Urdu, or Cantonese. Now, very interesting, because many of my minority friends would say, hey, we need to pass the exam. Let's do our own languages. But whereas the Filipinos, they didn't have Hindi or Urdu, so they went and learned Cantonese. So for myself, my dad said, go and learn Cantonese. So I went to primary education, 1 to 6 in English and Cantonese, but very, very basic. But it was very unique because in the morning, I would see all my local Chinese students go in, and then they would come out, and then we would go in. It was like this really weird system. Then as the photo you see right now is of my secondary school. I thought, oh, secondary school should be different. So I went to a local school called Delia Hipwo. And this time there was no morning or afternoon segregation. It was different floors. So if you look at my schoolmates, you'll see many of them, actually all of them are ethnic minorities. Different floors, upper floors, all local Chinese, lower floors, all ethnic minorities. Very interesting. And this time we had 2 languages. Again, it was one English, and the second choice was no longer Hindi or Urdu. It was, in fact, French. So today, 5 years of failing French, I only remember one sentence, which is "Je ne sais pas en français," which means I don't know French. So it's very interesting. But also for me, the community was very interesting because when you went to school, I was already looking at Form 4, Form 5, and then I looked at the Form 6 sections and there was no ethnic minorities. And I was wondering why. And then I looked at my Form 3 classes, people were already dropping out. People were already walking in a very wrong path or doing odd jobs. Then as I went past Form 3, many of my friends slowly started to drop off. And I, at Form 3, Form 4, Form 5, I knew my career or my future prospects was not great as an ethnic minority who didn't read and write Cantonese, not much going into higher education, forget universities. I just thought, oh my gosh, I'm just like the rest of them. I'll need to figure out a way to survive. And sadly, many of my minorities, we take the wrong way out, which, as you can see from my group of friends here, many of them were older. Many of them were already having criminal records, doing drugs. In fact, I had schoolmates who overdosed and died. So, my environment was starting to shape me. And I went to Form 4, Form 5. I did my public exams and I failed horribly. This is my best friend from childhood till today. And he has fallen off so many times into prison and rehabilitations. I thought this is eventually going to be my life. So Form 5, I started to, as I finished school, I left school, I started to rebel against my family, society. I stopped going to church. Didn't find a job. I just joined gangs and fight and did all kinds of crazy things. And I just thought I was untouchable and this is just the way it is. Society didn't accept me. Me and my friends are just going to rebel as ethnic minorities. And I thought, okay, I was living a good life, didn't really care anything, didn't have any future plans. I just thought, gang life is just gang life. You just become one for the rest of your life. Until one fine day, I was arrested myself. Never forget that day in Wan Chai about 15, 20 years ago. And as you are put into a prison cell, you're in trouble. You call your friends, nobody picks up. I tried to call my best friend KK, but I forgot he was in jail himself. So what do? I didn't want to call my parents because they kept telling me after leaving school that you are going to fall and nobody's going to support you and you're going to be in big trouble. So I didn't call them out of shame. Um, who did I call? I called this social worker that for many years tried to help me, but I kept ignoring her. Me and my friends ignored her. But somehow in that prison cell, till today, I remember this number, 9237-6464. And I said, Fermi, in Cantonese, "Okam chim dim la, mo yi lei pong sao." And she came at around 3 a.m., 3, 4 a.m., took a taxi from her home, came, bailed me out, and she still kind of looks the same. I don't, but she was an amazing woman. She bailed me out and took me home at 6 a.m. I'll never forget pressing my bell. My dad, mom waking up. What's going on? Who is this lady? She your girlfriend? I said no, my social worker. And thereon I had to explain I was been arrested. And at that time already she found me many amazing things. She found me a lawyer. She found me many VIPs to write letters for me because I was going to court in 2 months. And the lawyer told me ethnic minorities, usually when you get arrested, very likely you will get a criminal record. Very likely you will do jail time. So really, that was already more dead end for me. So anyway, Fermi found so many VIPs to write letters that Jeff is a good guy. Many people that didn't even know me wrote Jeff is a good guy, you know. And anyway, I went to court 2 months later, and somehow the judge gave me a chance. He said, "Young boy, why are you wasting your life away?" And he gave me a bind over, which means in 1 year, if I commit any crime, I'm going to jail. Of course, I came out, and that 1 year, I was the best kid in Hong Kong. I slowly changed my life, and actually, Fermi Wong pulled my ear and said, "Now you need to follow me, and you need to do what I tell you to do." And I said, "Okay." So first thing she did is she took me to many government departments. I met all the different chief of department, education department, home affairs bureau, you name it. Why? Because she wanted to advocate for minorities that we can't keep failing the system. We can't all be put into the prison system. We can't all be not having, education. So, and I can tell you, everyone said, well, Fermi, they need to read and write Cantonese. But she said, how can they read and write when you don't even have that in the education system? So she tried knocking on several doors, and suddenly she had an idea. Why don't we try vocational education? Because many minorities are good with, hospitality and other forms of education. And believe it or not, she went to a school called Ivy Institute of Vocational Education in Wong Hacking or Hacking Wong. And they also said no at the beginning. And Fermi then had a brilliant idea. She said, why don't we buy a special unit just for minorities and pay, just have everything specialized for us. And they said, sure, but it's going to cost a lot of money. And with Fermi, I learned something. It's really pushing that boundary, going beyond boundaries. She never took no for an answer. And somehow she raised over $2 million. And we were the first batch to study in the hospitality stream in Institute of Vocational Education, Wong Hacking. I studied a year of diploma, hotel stuff. And I went back 2 years ago for they invited me back as an alumni to give a speech. And now I see there's over 300 ethnic minority students in different programs, no more in hotel, no more in just hospitality. And it's no longer a privately funded program. It's government funded program, which is so amazing to see that little one pushing that boundary. Fermi never stopped there. And somehow I worked for 1 year 3 months in a hotel. Peninsula picked me out of the whole class, picked 3 of us. I worked in the Peninsula Hotel and I struggled for 3 months. I said, nope, this is not what I want to do. And somehow, I'm very lucky. My mom knew somebody and said, hey, there's a job offer in a big company called Star TV, which is now run by Fox. They needed someone to do editing on Indian channels. And I said, sure, I don't have much qualifications, but they still hired me. Learn as you go, 5-day working week, great pay. I said, I took it easy. So Fermi kept knocking, Jeff, keep equipping yourself. I said, Fermi, I'm okay. And I took it easy until 2009, financial tsunami came. And believe it or not, 500 in my company were laid off, and I was one of them. So I was like back to square one again. But through this time, I really try to play football. I'm a very good footballer. That's the only talent I thought I had. The school loved me so much. When I failed Form 5, they say, come back and repeat just to play in the football team. But for me, I tried to make it as a career, but it was so difficult in Hong Kong. I'll show you some photos of, I tried to play for a wonderful football club called Wan Chai Spartans in the Yaoi League. As a youngster, I remember, as a young 12, 13-year-old, I would go to the football association because there was a thing called McDonald Ching Fan Li, football schemes. And I would run to the football association and they would give me the form. And it was all in Cantonese. What do? I'm so desperate to play. I will go down to my local security guard, Hong Kong, and we will fill up the form and I will go submit. And you could see in that photo in '97, I was the only non-Chinese in my area. And in fact, I played 2 years for Kowloon City District team. And football really gave me a sense of identity. I always believe Hong Kong is not a racist city. The more you prove your ability, the more you prove you can be a team player, people accept you. And football changed my perception a lot. And in fact, this football program also changed my life entirely. It's if you look at the guy in the red t-shirt, he's a very famous social worker in Hong Kong. His name is Ng Wai Tong, and he helps a lot of homeless people in Sam Sui Po. And he saw me play football in one of these tournaments and he said, come join my team. You will love it. I said, sure. And he said, you will get to represent Hong Kong. I said, wow, sure. But he said, it's called the Hong Kong Mo Ga Che Sai Kai Bui. I said, what? I'm not homeless, But he says, no, but these are people in this team, similar background as you. Some are former drug addicts. Some are ex-gamblers, ex-offenders, street sleepers. We want to make a team to give you a sense of responsibility, a sense of overcoming obstacles. And believe it or not, in 2009, I went to Italy and represented Hong Kong, and they even gave me the captainship. So that gave me a sense of like, you know what? I always discriminate sometimes. People say, oh, you're not Hong Kongian. But I think, first of all, the Hong Kongian must come from within myself. And that really changed my perspective. Like, let's change myself first. And then eventually outside will accept me. I came back. I lost my job, as I mentioned. I was so depressed. My mom was worried I will go back into my old life, gang life. And so she went to a prayer meeting and she said, please pray for my son. So she was in a prayer meeting. One day she came back home and she said, Jeff, I found you a job. I'm like, wow, mom, thank you. Where? She says, Chongqing Dai Ha. I said, what? Chongqing Mansions. I did so much bad stuff. Why do you want me to go back and work there? And she said, well, just go check it out. And I checked out the place. I went up. And it was this beautiful community center, and it's called Christian Action Center for Refugees, where, believe it or not, till today, it's now my 12th year there. So, who is my headhunter? My mom. unbelievable. And it's a great community center where I serve refugees, ethnic minorities, people who fled war, religious persecution, race violence, political violence, all kinds of crazy stuff. And they come to Hong Kong as a temporary place of protection. And we are there providing welfare to them. And through my role there as a social worker, I've been so lucky. I've been helping many families reunite, move on to Canada and America. And I'm so grateful through my role. I'm very lucky because I'm Jeff as a social worker. I'm an Indian who works in Chungking, but also local Hong Konger. I get to be different caps at different times. And I'm so lucky through that. The local Chinese population who used to have very negative stereotypes of Chungking, they've come inside the buildings, and I'm really proud. Schools, primary schools, secondary schools, universities, churches have now come into Chungking like it's a second home. So, that's what I've been able to do in this job. A lot of media have been, exposure. I'm very blessed, every time it's been positive media exposure, because if you know ethnic minorities, you look at many of the media exposure, it's always some negative, sensational news. But I'm so lucky. If you Google my name, it's usually good stuff that comes off. Even LA Times has featured me, and a couple of others. And through that, I started a football team there because I thought football changed my life. It can change the life of a refugee because many of them feel so discriminated. They're darker skinned. There's a lot of misconception on many of the African, Middle Eastern. So I started a team called UCCA, United Colors of Christian Action. And through that, we've changed the lives and identity of self-esteem of many refugees. I've had an amazing story. I was coaching the guy there in a goalkeeping jersey. I remember 5 years ago, he said, always discriminated. But he played this local tournament. We built this tournament for 7 years together with other local Chinese. And, it was like suddenly they became from refugee to from Pangyao to Hingdai. It was like, wow. And I'll never forget the last day of the tournament, Joseph, my goalkeeper, was leaving Hong Kong. He got the resettlement ticket. And we announced it to the tournament. Hey, Joseph just wants to say thank you. This has been a 7-year relationship. I can never forget. We were playing football in the game as a competitive game. They stopped the game, and the local players came down and brought a cake for Joseph, gave him hugs, standing ovation. And my goalkeeper was crying. He said, "This is unbelievable. 7 years ago, I was a Hakyan, or a useless refugee, and today I'm a Hingdai." So really you could see bits and pieces of change. So Fermi Wong, she saw the work that I was doing in my job. I was a community worker. She says, "Jeff, why don't you go back to school?" I said, "I don't want to go back to school." She said, "Go and study social work." And at that time, there was no ethnic minority locally trained social workers in Hong Kong. And no schools and universities were accepting us because, again, the language restriction. But Fermi, pushing again beyond boundaries, never took no for an answer. So she went to a school called Ming Oi, Choi Ban, and she said, "Please allow for ethnic minorities to be in the social work program." And they said, "Okay, Fermi, we will do test case on 3 of ethnic minorities." And believe it or not, in 2010, I was the first batch to study in the local social work program. And it was the first time in my life to study not in separate floors, separate sections, or morning or afternoon, but together with local Chinese social workers. And it was an amazing experience. I became such family. I would say I became Hingdai in 4 weddings. Today I still play football with them. We have a social work football club, and we play in tournaments. We do tapinos and chankeis, and really, it's a family. I really wish I had this since kindergarten, because that would have changed my life. A painful story to share to you is my mom. For me, she was so proud when I finally went back to school. Out of all the things I've done, nearly go to jail, nearly walked a very wrong path, that she was so proud. She was telling all my relatives, "My son is back in school. He's going to graduate at 33." And I'm like, "Mom, our relatives' kids are going to graduate. Don't compare me like that." But she would wait for me every day after school, and it was so wonderful to see. Go to work, finish school, come back home at 11, and she'll be waiting for me. And she was so waiting for the day I was finally going to have a graduation ceremony. But very painful. My mom passed away 6 months before my graduation, and it's still, today, all the accomplishments I've had, she can't see it. So I'm always telling the young people, make your parents proud while you can, because you just don't know. Life is so fragile, and we know these days with the pandemic how crazy it is. A painful story to share. I mean, of course, 6 months later, I got my social work card, which is still my biggest pride in my pocket. this card now has opened up to more ethnic minorities being social workers. I'm proud to say there are now close to 20 ethnic minority locally trained social workers because we opened up that route. My graduation day, I really believe God always has a sign for me, and it was on my mom's birthday. And Fermi Wong was there, and I can remember her whispering to me. She says, "Hey, you were so close to being in jail, and look at where you are today. Well, Hodo Leko diploma." I'm like, wow, amazing things. Like I said, my mom passed away. We all know in Hong Kong you need to line up or wait for space when you need to be buried or find a columbarium for the ashes. We would have waited for sure, but because my mom is Christian, we applied for the Chinese Christian cemetery in a very beautiful Pokfulam near Queen Mary Hospital. And believe it or not, they replied back by saying, no, because your mom is not Chinese. She's Christian, but she's not Chinese. And it really hit me. Even in death, you can be separated by color. It's crazy. So, of course, I learned something from Fermi for many years. She said, go to the media. Why, Fermi? She says, because Hong Kong people, when they read injustice, they always have this sense of inequality, the sense of that this is wrong. And believe it or not, we went to the media. My dad shared a story on SCMP. The next day, we got a call from the Chinese, the higher ups, and they said, we have given your mom a space. And believe it or not, my mom is one of the very few colored persons in the Chinese Christian cemetery. I really believe in a few years we will call it just a Christian cemetery, maybe, or people won't look weird when we go and pray. And they don't do that anymore because I think it's very normal. I couldn't be a football player. I tried to be a football coach, but guess what? I went to Football Association. They said, oh, this time actually the problem is the exam is in Cantonese. I said, what? Football, coaching, how hard is it to say shoot, pass, like those things? And they said, no, sorry, you can bring your friend to help you translate during the exam. I found it so crazy. So a very famous footballer, if you look at the golden t-shirt, his name is Santosi, Hong Kong's very amazing. I think he's the best player we ever had. And he heard about our story, and he's an ethnic minority. He's British and Portuguese. And when he heard about our story, he said, let's go to the media. And we went to the media and we said, we as minorities want to be football coaches. And guess what? The next day, the Football Association called after so much advocacy, and they say, we are changing it to English. We will provide English exam papers. And me and my best friend, KK, we did our D license in the football. And I'm very proud to say today there are, I think, another 10 or 15 ethnic minority young coaches learning the football, again, pushing beyond the boundaries. Football is also a way. Why should it only be, careers in finance or sports, arts, music should also be something in Hong Kong that we encourage more. I'm very lucky through my role as a social worker, I have been able to advocate, to be a voice, to be a representative. And I'm so lucky throughout my 10 years or more, I've been able to be a voice, be media, be in quotes, work with different relevant agencies. And I'm still doing that today. I never imagined one day when I get arrested that the police will invite me a few years ago. This is to do cultural sensitivity training. I tell a police officer when an African man is loud and gesturous, it's not that he wants to attack you. Maybe we can use less hostile English. When a gentleman, when you see is there, you don't say, gentlemen, what's your problem? You say, gentlemen, how can I help you? Why are you here? Two different ways. So this is something we're trying to have, is more dialogue. And I'm very proud that many of the senior officers have even invited us to police college to do these trainings, to talk about race and bridging gaps and learning about cultural sensitivity. Yeah, and in 2014, I actually had to go all the way to the UN together with Unison to get to talk about segregated schools, how it's affected me and many generations, and that we should not have this. We should have a better Chinese as a second language curriculum. And I can say it's really changed. Today, there's so many more progress in that aspect. This is some of the photos that I did. I went all the way. And I'm very, very lucky these days that I get to be this representative. I get to not only go to local schools and talk about, please accept minorities, but I also go to local ethnic minority schools and say, learn the language, integrate, understand Hong Kong systems, cultures, and what it means to be a Hong Konger. So I'm doing both ways, and we're really relying on also parents, because we need to change the mindset of parents. I'm very lucky through my role. I advocate for people who I think are ethnic minorities who struggle in the system. This is a friend of mine, Julie, who was treated quite horribly by a KMB bus driver who refused to open the ramp for her, even though she had a disability, and said some horrible things. And I remember seeing it on Facebook, and I said, where are the community leaders? Why aren't anyone voicing out? And immediately I called up Fernando Chen Chihong and put it up on my Facebook, and and immediately KMB offered a meeting and of course apologized for that. So I think this is my sense of, there's injustice, you learn and you go and you talk. I go to many local schools. I'm very grateful for the reception. Many local Hong Kongers, they really do want to understand us better. But because the education system doesn't talk so much about, hey, you can go to the Sikh temple and have a good meal and understand about religion, or you can go to the mosque, have a visit. We need to be doing more of that. And that's why my cultural tours in Chungking and some of my other initiatives have been so successful recently, because we do that. We talk openly about questions that people want to ask. These are the first batch of social workers. I'm very proud. There are more now. And something about me I've learned in the last 10, 15 years is stop relying so much on elite or powerful or rich or, or all the time on the government. You can do things on your own. We don't always have to complain. And one of the things I learned in the Nepal earthquake in 2015, I saw many groups doing different fundraising and all that. And some of my friends said, Jeff, can we do something just for the people, just the grassroots? And I can never forget, 5 of us got together. Within a few days, we got the permission of the Clock Tower, Star Ferry, and with the police permission, we managed to do a candlelight vigil. And I'll never forget, over 3,000 Hong Kongers just came in, did a very beautiful minute silence, some candlelight, some speeches, and we raised over $110,000 in that just one event. And we put that money in a very transparent way into an organization in Nepal, and it showed, wow, 5 people get together, you can bring 50 more volunteers, and you can do it. So my idea started, let's do more. So I started a group together with my wife and friends called Minority Initiative. I'll never forget 2018 typhoon. Everyone know what happened. That was a crazy typhoon. Hong Kong, unbelievable Hong Kong spirit. Typhoon, everything is damaged. Next day, you still need to go to work. And what we realized, how crazy, right? You have buses, bus stands, everything destroyed. And I remember an African gentleman started cleaning the streets with his friends in Chim Sa Choi and Hoi Fong Do, and that someone videoed it, and it became viral. And guess what? That guy was my client. And he came back to me and says, Jeff, can we do more? I said, are you sure? Nowadays, everything is social media, maybe public, maybe negative. I said, all right, let's go. And I took him and some friends to the most local and most effective place, To Ba Wan Gong Yun, near the seaside. I'll never forget. I went to the park officials. I said, well, they想幫手，見到好辛苦. And they said, 唔使你哋幫手，我哋自己搞掂. And then when we went out, those poor Assam, 你哋大隻，你哋要幫手, I said, what do we do now? I said, let's just go and do what we can. So 15 of us, very big guys. I'm quite big, but I have bigger guys. And they went into the park. I'll never forget the first sentence as we went into the park. These elderly papa and they were like, wow,咁多黑鬼嘅呢度. And then I'm like, oh my gosh. And then my client said, what is she saying? I said, doesn't matter, just clean. And for 2 hours we cleaned. And I think it was even better than new. And the 2 papa who said those hak wai, they disappeared. So I went to my client. I said, hey, did you say something to her? What's going on? Where are they suddenly? They said, I don't even speak the language. Anyway, 10 minutes later, that papa came back with 2 big bags of polo bao and waitalai. And I thought, wow, this is the Hong Kong's thing, right? No matter what, you have these negative things, but you just do what is right. It will change perceptions. And believe it or not, those park officials who said they didn't need our help, they saw the work we did. They kept, well, can you come back every day? I said, sure. And the next day we went back, they bought all all these new equipments, gloves, drinks. And we went for 4 days clean continuously. 5 days later, we were up. After the last day, we were so tired and we didn't go. And I remember the call, come here, I said, oh, they hope away. And then also we had some other initiatives planned. So, it really is amazing. So since then, the Minority Initiative is a group that I started with my friend, like I said, my wife. We do every Choi, we go to Sam Sui Po to provide meals to the homeless and to those government street cleaners, because we thought Hong Kong people only rest 1 day in the year, and that is Choi, because it's a very important time. And then we thought, what about these folks who are neglected? Why don't we as non-Chinese, since it's not an important day for us. Go and do something good. And every time we post it up on Facebook, we have 40 odd people just come in and buy McDonald's meals, give out lycees, and it's wonderful. Sometimes even local Chinese families join us and they said, by the way, this is my first time in Samseipo. And it's so weird that it takes the non-Chinese to take them to a very localized place to talk about very local issues like homelessness. So I'm very grateful through that. Nowadays, many younger generations, before if you Google me, it's always Jeff complain, Jeff complain, Jeff this, Jeff that. Now I say more younger generations are starting to take more ownership of community, of ethnic minority issues. I always learn to do things in a constructive, positive criticism. Like you need to have dialogue, especially nowadays. Look at the world we live in. If we don't have positive dialogue, there's no way. If you just keep saying you're one color and the other color, it's not going to work. I think we all need to find a common solution, and that's what I've been learning to do. This is not when I was arrested, by the way. These are my friends who are police officers. There's over 15 ethnic minority police officers. There's firemen now. There's medics. There's doctors. There's teachers. So I think we're slowly going to see more and more of a diverse Hong Kong Singapore in this future Hong Kong. There's fantastic, examples of Lei Guan, Q Bobo, and many more, Vivek, and all that. I never imagined one day the government will give me an award, and in 2016, I was, as mentioned, received the commendation from the Home Affairs Bureau, a beautiful little pin. And for me, it was a really amazing thing because, it's been such a difficult thing in Hong Kong, always working in the advocacy space, but it shows your work can be, recognized, considering I was going through. In 2018, the United States government invited me for a 3-week training to learn about ethnic minorities in the US. And it was an amazing change for me because I made a great man called James Meredith. If you look at the black and white photo, he is walking and marching together with Martin Luther King. James Meredith is the first black person allowed to study in the University of Mississippi. He had to fight. There were riots. Students fought to not allow this black man to go into the university. In fact, he had to go to the High Court, the Supreme Court, to get the right to study. And even then, with the court order, he was kicked out. And finally, President JFK went on live television and said the rights of James Meredith should be respected as of every man. And he sent 20,000 troops with him. And even then, they refused one more time. And President JFK got so annoyed, he sent more troops. And finally, he was allowed in the university. And there is now a statue of him in the University of Mississippi. So incredible, just hearing his story. And, in 2019, I was given the Changemakers Award by Cathay Pacific, which was amazing for me. Gave me some amount of money to travel around the world to get more inspiration, together with 2 others. And of course, last year, also in 2019, I was the Saptaiki Cheng, which is 10 outstanding young people. Amongst my other colleagues there's so many amazing achievers, doctors, and a badminton Paralympian named Daniel, who's going to represent Hong Kong in the coming Summer Paralympics. So lots of great people. For me, it's amazing to see this color in a billboard. And for me, the biggest honor as a Manchester United fan, because my mom always said, you love this team so much, what have they done for you? But believe it or not, just in December, I was one of the 7 global heroes picked by Manchester United, and I was close to tears. Actually, I was in tears. And Paul Pogba, who is a World Cup winner, left a message for me and just talked about my work for the refugee center. You cannot dream these things sometimes, and now today, I'm so grateful for Chungking Manchester, the place that I didn't want to because it was part of the negativity. But I'm so glad I've been able to be part of the platform of positive change. It is this very unique building, and I invite each and every one of you to come and have curry, visit our center. It's the best curry, cheap curry, and wonderful. I will take you around, and I'll never imagine organizing tours that people line up to come to Chungking. If you tell me before people want to line up to come to Chungking, who would imagine that? People don't want to even pass by Chungking sometimes. But today, we're doing all that. And my tours are so popular and so wonderful. I have elderly joining it, students, families bringing their small children. You have an elderly, it is truly a blessing when they tell you, I've been here for 70 odd years. I've never been inside the building. And thanks to you. So, please come. I'd love HKUST and the library groups to come in and join it and do a food tasting. This is the center where I work in. It's a beautiful home away from home, we always call it. I never imagined in my life that a place where we've seen so many refugees come and go, so many Hong Kongers come and serve and volunteer, and I've even had babies born in this place. We have our trophy cabinet. I never imagined one day, during the World Cup, we had 50 people squished in watching the game. All Hong Kong people and foreign people, refugees, clients, everyone just watching the game. And last year in September, this turned into an ash, literally a fire, turned everything upside down. Funny enough, not my office. My office on the inside was saved, but we were in trouble. What do we do? We're not government funded. We are a refugee center. We are in Chungking Mansions, and these are places not many people will say, "Oh, let's fundraise." I know Hong Kong people are the most amazing people, but this was a doubt in me. Can we do it in the pandemic after a social unrest year? But believe it or not, we did it. I said, let's just put it up on the social media. Let's just trust the Hong Kong, 精神. We will always do something when the time is right, when people feel it's right. And amazing, 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 because even through the fire, we moved to the down and we were continuing our service, just like the Hong Kong spirit. No matter what's going on, earthquake or not, your work continues. Your professionalism continues. The Hong Kong work ethic continues. And believe it or not, local Hong Kongers raised so much for us in a span of 2 months, nearly $2.3 million. I remember putting it up on my Facebook platform, and every day someone was sending me bank-in slips. Students would give me $20. Some people would give me 10,000. I just thought, is this really happening? Are they really giving it to us? And here we are, $2.3 million later, and we are slowly building our center up. And I'd love to invite you, as in April, we should have a brand new 3 centers. So in a way, a blessing. You know why? Because we have never touched this center for 10, 15 years. And Chungking is a very old building. But because of this fire, now we are able to fix the other 2 units. So, someone was always saying, out of the ashes you rise. And it's a very interesting theme. Really, out of the ashes you can rise. And that's now slowly being built up, thanks to Hong Kong people. Last week, a friend of mine called me in November and said, hey, you need to come with me to Happy Valley. I said, sure. And he brought me up to this war memorial, a war memorial where many of our ethnic minorities served in Hong Kong, protecting Hong Kong. And I saw the condition and we were both disappointed. So I said, all right, you know what? Let's hope the public can support us. And I did a Facebook appeal last week. And on March 6th, over 40 Hong Kong people joined me to help clean up and restore a memorial where over 46 different ethnic minorities. Some are soldiers. And believe it or not, if someone ever says, go back to your home country, I will say no. Why? Because I found someone from the south of India buried in this very same place in 1883. 1883. And in the back of that tombstone was written in my language. I was shocked. So I'm very proud. We are continuing this Saturday. If any of the students, anyone wants to join me, we are going to complete the work and doing the restoration. We are doing the cement work, and we're going to make it a beautiful place. I intend to bring more children, students, and groups to come up, talk about history, talk about Hong Kong. People think Hong Kong, does not have much history in a sense, but actually we do. We have a lot to talk about. And it's so great to see locals, Africans, Chinese, all coming together to make a cemetery be dignified and have respect again. I'm so grateful, and we continue this Saturday at 10 a.m. if anyone wants to join, with a nice meal provided by the Hindu temple. Even the SCMP covered it, and it's fantastic to see that when you put your heart into something good, you just end up doing it. I'll finish up soon because I know we're running short on time. Fermi Wong, a few years ago, nearly died. She shocked me, and my best friend KK just said, I've got cancer and I'm in a very critical stage. And I just said to myself, how can this woman who helped so many people just be gone? But she's a fighter. She never says no, and she fought it. And for me, it was not just her fighting it, but she never once came back to me and my best friend and said, here is the bill for all the things I've done for you. You need to repay me in some way. She's never done that, not even once. And I'm so proud that because of this woman saying no and coming out and pushing beyond the boundaries, I've also been instilled with these values. And not only me, now I'm instilling that values with the younger generation. So I'm really proud today standing here, and your university has invited me, considering what's happening around, as you may know, in the last couple of months. But I'm thanking you for your confidence, and I really hope to continue this dialogue and have any questions you may want to raise. I'll finish with this very ending story. This is Mr. Lee, an amazing man. He read about my, I went to India a few years ago with View TV for a travel show. And this gentleman read about my story, and somehow he came to Chungking. He didn't know where I worked. He just showed a newspaper and showed a photo of me. But you know, in Chungking, many people look like me. So this old man coming in there, I cannot imagine. And then finally he came up to my center and I said,唔好意思，我哋係幫難民㗎咋. We don't help elderly. And then suddenly he spoke in very good English. He says, I'm a former taxi driver. I've been driving for 40 something years. And what I do in my taxi is I have English and Chinese class. So when a passenger sits there, I teach him Cantonese. And if a passenger needs to, I need to learn English, I will learn English. And he's been doing that. And then suddenly he grabbed my hand and then he did something on me and I'm like, oh my gosh. And he says, I teach Taekwondo. I said, wow. And he says, I would like to teach ethnic minority women self-defense. I said, wow, this is amazing. A 70, 80-year-old man wants to come to Chungking and do these incredible work. People used to say, oh, the older generation are racist. I don't think so. I think nobody is racist. I think it's really about opening up the platform and have a genuine exchange like I do with Mr. Lee. So I hope that encourages you. I think most of you are the younger future generations. The change is in your hands, but we need to have dialogue. We need to have constructive work together to progress for our beautiful city we call home. So I just want to say thank you for patiently listening. I hope the photos engaged you with a bit more entertainment than my talk. So again, I say thank you so much.
Thanks, Jeff, for this amazing talk. I really find it energizing and heart-lifting, and I hope you agree with me. And now, before Q&A, we would like to take a group photo. Can I invite you to turn on your videos? And hold your smiles. Photo taken in progress. Hold your smiles. Okay, I think that's done, right? Okay. So now we are into Q&A. You can raise your hand and unmute yourself to ask questions. Or you can put your questions in the chat box.
Hi, Jeff. It's a very inspiring talk. I really like it. I believe that there's a lot of tears and heartache. Yeah. behind it. I think probably your talk will be very inspiring to our students. So if some of our students are interested in the work that you're doing, in what way or in what capacity they can help out as a volunteer?
That's a great question you asked, and I really honestly think the best way to do anything is to come in, locks out, right? Or in Hong Kong, we always say, just come in, get your hands dirty. And I truly believe chunking is an experience in itself. I have had many now. We only used to have foreign international students that come in to do volunteer or internships. Now we've had so many local ones apply because they also think Hong Kong's changing. The world is changing. We need to be more interconnected, and where better to do it than at home first. So I really ask the young generation to challenge themselves, come in, get in an uncomfortable environment, but before you know it, you'll see a huge change in yourself. And I've seen it with my local Chinese community college students. They used to be so shy, and you could see the experience changes them. It also, it shapes you as a human being. So I really ask people, come in, come out, and even today, if you've got questions, anything, it's a moment to ask. And usually I'm always realizing when you do student talks, people don't want to show their face, they don't want to talk about it. But I think it's time to be very open, and where better moments now than Zoom. You don't have to actually show your emotions too much. You can type away, you can ask. So yeah, I really hope they come out of their comfort zones.
So you just want them to show up at your center?
Yeah, absolutely. Just come in, message me if they want to. I have a Facebook page. You can find me, Jeffrey Andrews. Message me, and we do get lots of it. And I'm very open to students. The last 10 years, when a student comes in without, I just say, yes, sure, come on in. And I do interviews for them, because I really think if you change their mindset now, they're going to be our leaders. At the end of the day, it's their future now.
Okay, I've got two questions in chat.
Fantastic.
Okay, question one. What is the usual discrimination you and your friends experience in Hong Kong?
Great question. Let me answer that first. Very honestly, sadly, it's the surface level discrimination, right? That's the one that affects you most. You can come and try and taking a taxi with me. Sometimes they come and they go past me. I'm opening the door and then they'll quickly shut down and then go off. Try sitting in public transportation. Sometimes they hold your nose. If you go into a shop, there's people following you as if you're going to steal. There's a lot of things people maybe not think that you understand the language. And I think that also comes from, sadly, the education, right? In other countries, they already tell you, hey, by the way, why does an Indian man have a turban on? It's not to scare you, it's their religion, and you have to be sensitive in how you approach that. So I really think, sadly, it's the surface level stuff here. And that needs to change, and it's already changing. Many of you guys now, the young generation, even the older ones, instead of calling us something, they say 朋友, and I'm like, wow, that's interesting. Even taxi drivers now, 朋友, and I'm like, that's awesome, right? So there's a huge change. I really laugh about one of the incidents that happened, recently is the quarantine. When a few months ago, many of our Pakistani brothers and sisters were put into quarantine. The first meal they got was pork sandwiches. I was shocked. I said, my gosh, we worked so hard, the most basic, right? And I can tell you why. Because if I go to a cha chan tang today, any cha chan tang, and someone maybe like a, very old school waitress, and if I order char siu fan, she's like, "喂,唔食得㗎喎." I said, how can they understand that? And if I say 牛肉我食得㗎，唔得㗎，一定有豬肉㗎，有牛肉㗎，你啲人咪。So it's so crazy that that concept can go there. So we just need a whole scale change in that atmosphere, and I truly believe it's so possible. Why? We have people like Vivek doing humor. We use humor. 香港人好鍾意 humor. We like to laugh about things, and we use humor to put in those things. So yes, there's a lot of hope, but I really hope surface level discrimination, if you can stop that, we can stop that. Hong Kong will be so great as a city. It is already the greatest city in the world.
Okay, another question. Okay, there are two parts to this. What is your greatest challenge in changing the local perceptions of ethnic minority groups or having interest in these groups of people? And I meant how to trigger the interest of local people to understand the minority groups in Hong Kong.
Again, wonderful question. And it is really true. Recently, a lot of people have said, Jeff, you're only preaching to the preached. Like they already buy into, multicultural Hong Kong, but you really need to go to those who don't. And that is something I'm really struggling. We need a citywide, all these campaigns are great. Hong Kong Sing Ga, Hong Kong Asia's World City, but we need to be doing that as a city. We need to be doing that in our education system. We need to be changing more immigration officers at the airport to have different ethnicities, right? We are always competing with Singapore. And I think one thing they have got right is that multicultural. Yes, they have more population. But here in Hong Kong, we have so much unique talent. And I really hope we can see that in every aspect. I was proud when we had a first Nepalese or Pakistani taxi driver, minibus driver. Even those are important. You know, people should not say these are low skilled. No, actually, we need to be visible in all spectrums of society. What really pisses me off, if I may use the word, is recently, you know, if you look at the social unrest last year, some of the universities hired, or some of the MTRs hired African larger male. Now, that's good you hired them, thank you. But I hope you continue that after all things settle down, because that shows your genuine intention, not to use us as barriers or, you know, scarecrows in this matter. So I really hope there's a genuine change and think, oh, actually, you know what? They've done a good job. They can do it just as much as the local. We will continue to hire them. And that, for me, I'm hoping will continue in the next couple of years.
Okay, another question in chat. Do Indian teenagers who live in Hong Kong have similar habits as Hong Kong teenagers?
Very interesting question. You know what? It varies. It really varies. I can tell you most of us who are Hong Kong Sao Gao, you know, they're like Hong Kong people. They also love Cha Sui Fan. They also nowadays, less of them are doing their more religious, Bao Tao, these things, because Hong Kong as a society changes. It's a modern society. It's a very liberal society. It does. But of course, there are some things that's unique, like Choi, very important for Chinese people. For us, Diwali or religion is a very important thing. Religion is more important than politics, culture, or even money sometimes. If you look at someone, they're so poor, but they say, I still need to go and pray 5 times. You know, so those are things we need to understand. Oh, you know, why is someone so extreme? It's not extreme. It's just because religion, culture, traditions, just like Choyette, right? You need to be with your family, no matter what. You're a taxi driver or what, you will have that first meal with your family. It's the same thing. So just try and understand there are dynamics in many of the ethnic minorities. Also remember, we have generational gaps. Our parents may be really, very old school, and they still want to be very Indianized, you know. So those are the struggles we are also facing. So, you know, I would say go and understand a teenager. Maybe sometimes on the outside they look okay, they may not want any help, but you know, you can approach them. And one of the greatest thing I'll end with is South Asian people are very hospitable. We love inviting you over, have a cup of tea. If you go to Chungking, it's like, you know, you will never be left out without eating, especially during Ramadan, which is coming up next month. When the Muslims open their fast, it's like a party. And if you just kingo, and they will also, well, yes, I say, that's the thing we are. So you know what? Celebrate diversity, but also understand the uniqueness of each and every culture that we have.
Okay, here's another question. What words you think are particularly unpleasant to hear, and which we should be careful and avoid when we try to chat or exchange ideas?
Fantastic question again. Look, I think some of the terms used nowadays, right? Hak guai, hak chai, you know, cha chai, all those things, I think very, very directly talking about someone's race or religion. You know, sometimes people say, "Ah, lai tang, ah, hombo chap kek." Those things I think need to be stopped, because those are very sensitive. It's not just someone's identity, it's their religion. It's, you know, stuff that we can't change our color, and I don't want to. I never, as a young person, I used to hate my color. You know, I used to go to my mom and I used to say, "Mom, why you make me this color? Because nobody picks me in the football pitch." And my mom always said, "Jeff, if you play football all the time, you're always getting dirty. If you were white, how many times you need to shower? You know, you think about that." And I was like, "Oh yes, mommy, you're right." But you know, I wish not all parents have to explain and calm people down like that. But I think we again need to understand diversity, understand what is sensitive, and that I don't blame you for making mistakes. Again, it has to come from the schooling system maybe, or more efforts. How do I change things? Come and join our Chungking tours. It is awesome. We take you on a real 1.5 hour of a walk through cultures, religion, food, and this beauty of this building. So again, I invite all of you, please come and join. We'll work with Eunice and everybody to maybe organize something after the COVID is getting better. I always say one thing: food always breaks down all barriers.
Okay, thanks very
Thank you, guys.
much,
Thank you so much.
Jeff.
Thank you. you.
Thanks all for joining us today. I wish you a most pleasant afternoon, and we look forward to seeing you in our next event. One last question.
Okay.
Where is it? I don't see it. Sorry.
Technology.
Technology? Oh, I don't see it. Okay, I repeat this question. Cantonese language ability has improved for ethnic minorities over the years.
That's right.
So what is the second part of the question? Any special advice for Chinese teachers on this?
Wow, you guys are asking some really good, you have some good students here. Fantastic. You know what, as a minority and many of our NGOs have been advocating for is to have Chinese teachers have more cultural competency and to teach Chinese as a second language. Remember, when we go back home as minorities, our parents don't know any of this stuff. So we struggle, but when you teach Cantonese to a Cantonese person, it's easier, right? Because they found, okay, Papa, Mama would bonzao or whatever. But when we go back home, you know, no way. So I think the teachers also need to understand how to teach it. There's technical ways, there's skills with that, and also there must be that cultural competency to understand there's so many dynamics in a minority. Remember, I speak 4 languages and they're all different, and the Haoyam, sometimes I also speak Cantonese in a funny way and I say, oh my gosh, my accent just changed there. And then when I speak English, I speak like it. So it's confusing for us. So imagine how it is like. And Cantonese is not an easy language, we all know. But I really highly recommend that all minorities need to read, write, and speak Cantonese, no matter what. Hong Kong, you know, Cantonese is I'd say it's a beautiful language, right? I love listening to Beyond and listening to all their beautiful lyrics in the old 80s and 90s. And I wish now the younger generation can know, by learning Cantonese, you get to understand all these little beautiful things that mean in this language. So again, it's difficult, but we really need the teachers to have cultural competency, yet also to understand how to teach it as a foreign language. Thank you. Thank you for your questions.
Okay, thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.
I hope you have all enjoyed the talk. And then, so let's give Jeff a virtual applause for all the positive energy. It's like receiving a boost, a vaccine against
negativity,
negative
yes,
feelings,
yes.
whatever.
But thank you to the students.
Thank
as well.
you very
Amazing.
much. So we look forward to seeing you in our next event. Thank you all.